This tutorial picks up where we left off with while loops. What we're going to do here is we're going to turn our existing while loop into a menu for user input. So I'm going to change this hello world to say enter which item you would like. And this is just going to be a menu, and I'm going to type out 3 items. And here I'm going to say 1 football, 2 soccer, and then 3 I'm going to do hockey. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to have user give us input, right? So we learned prior in the before tutorials that we can get user input by doing something like this, setting up a variable string, let's say str user input equals, we just do sc.next, okay? So we're going to capture that, but we got to now basically test to see if or what item they prefer, but we're not giving the user a way out of this menu. So if we do this, what would ideally probably happen is this is going to repeat itself over and over again. So what we want to do, add to our menu one more item, and I want to just do exit. So 4 will be exit, okay? So we're going to take their input, and I left out creating my scanner object. Obviously, we see a little underline here. We wonder what's going on. Well, I've imported my scanner, but I never created the object. So let's create that outside of the loop because we don't want it to be created over and over again. So what we're going to do is scanner sc equals new scanner, and that's system.in, which you've learned from prior tutorials. Okay, and you gotta be careful sometimes with IntelliSense. You see me using and typing, and sometimes I get ahead of myself. Okay, so we have that there. So now we can take the user input. What we want to do is we want to change that over to an integer to make it easier to test. So what we can do is we can say another variable called int, and what we'll do here is we'll call it int user input. So this will be the integer version. And how do we convert the string to an integer? Well, we can do integer dot parse int, and you'll see that it'll drop the variable in for us. It predicts what we want, which is great. Now we can test it. So if int user input equals 1, what we can do here is print something. We can do an else if, and we can say int user input equals 2. And I'm just going to shelf all this here. We'll put in some print commands after this. Else if it's 3, and I'll make myself save some time by copy pasting. And number 4, we're just going to put in as the final else. And with the final else, what we're going to do is we're going to move that loop control variable up here. So if they enter anything but a 1, 2, or 3, it's going to close this loop. And we're just going to go 1, 2, and we're going to fix this to a 3. And we're going to copy paste some print outlines. You prefer football. Just confirming, nothing fancy, just giving you an idea of how this works. And we're going to change from football to soccer to hockey. Okay, and then below that loop in that if statement, I'm just going to put in a few blank lines just to allow for some spacing between iterations. Okay, this creates spacing. Tell them what they like based on the entry. So we'll do this here and make sure that's really a comment. And here we're going to say test the user input. Here, convert input to integer for testing. Collect user input and print out a menu in this case while this is true. This variable is true. Always good to improve your comments. So we know what all this does now. All right, we got a variable here that's for controlling our loop. While that variable stays true, we're going to show this menu. We're just going to confirm what the user inputted from that menu, and if they finally enter a 4, we're just going to exit and break out. So let's run this. All right, enter which item you would like. Football, soccer, hockey, or exit. 1, you see it repeats itself. 2, you see it repeats itself. Let's just enter a 3. We've run all test cases now. Let's enter a 4. And notice it no longer repeated. Let's run it one more time. And this time, let's enter something that's not a 1, 2, 3, or 4 and see what happens. Oop, we got an exception. So I'm not going to tell you why we got an exception or what to do with that exception. I'll tell you why we got an exception. What we're going to end up doing is we're going to do a future tutorial that explains how to handle and test the user input to make sure it's what we're hoping for. So we failed here on this line. We're trying to parse the user's input to an integer, and I did not enter an integer. So I'll leave you thinking about that. How might you track to make sure that this line of code does not fail? A hint, you try something and you catch it. I hope you find this tutorial helpful, and I will see you in future tutorials. Next up, we're going to do for clauses. Thank you.